Good morning, Morning Musings by Melinda. I got to tell you how much I enjoy the fact that you comment and talk to each other and honor that in the musings we're teaching things and that you get a kick out of certain things. I get a real kick out of that. And I really appreciate when you have a comment or you share something. And I said yesterday, I guess, I said, I feel I feel as fine as frog's fur. And somebody said, what the hell does that mean? Well, it's an 1865 quote from C. Davis's diary. And it's a quote that says, I have a better flow of spirits this morning. And in fact, feel as fine as frog's hair. So it's an old-fashioned quote about feeling much better in your spirit, that you regrouped and rejuvenated. So thank you for your questions about that. Today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Akashic Records. What does Akashic Records mean? Well, basically, Akashic is a Sanskrit word that means, being in the air or being in the ethers. And it's about your vibrational frequency and the knowledge of the vibration that continues throughout your incarnations. And so remember that you are a ball of light. You are a ball of energy, that this body of yours is just a suitcase that houses that ball, and you're supposed to be unpacking the suitcase before you get to heaven, not packing it up with more shit. But the Akashic Records kind of has those checks and balances of the karma of what you did energetically that you learned from, and continue forward until you get to a place where you can ascend, like Jesus did, or whether you have to, kind of filter through some of that nonsense that we have here in third dimensional frequency on the earth plane, on planet Earth, which is really hell in my opinion, and have to work through things again. So it's a matter of understanding, who you really are in your total being. And who you really are in your total being is not just this lifetime. It has, aspects of other lifetimes involved in it. So I'm going to tell you an interesting story, and some of you may have heard me tell this story before, and if I'm repeating myself to you, I apologize. But when I was in my 30s, I decided to become a hypnotherapist. And remember, I have a strong Catholic background. And when we were learning how to do past lives, I kind of shrugged to myself and thought, well, it doesn't matter whether it was real or imagined. If it's therapeutic for someone, I'll still do past lives. So I was unsure whether I totally believed in it. During the course of those classes, you hypnotize each other in order to learn. Under hypnosis, I went back to a past life during the Civil War, in which I was a Union soldier, and my brother went with the Confederacy, and I was very upset under hypnosis that he had gone with the Confederacy. I saw us on a battlefield, and I saw him get killed. A cannonball landed near me and blew off the bottom of my leg, and I went home to my farm in Pennsylvania after the war, where my wife and children basically took care of the farm, and it was a very depressed life for me. I was very sad about my brother and losing him that way, and the differences politically between us, which I think is very interesting to bring up this past life in today's world, because, there are so many differences between us politically right now. In fact, my single clients who are dating are struggling, whether they be Republican or Democrat, on dating somebody on the opposite side of the aisle. And I find that very interesting, because my husband and I come from two different places politically, and yet we have brought each other more into the middle with our discussions and our ability to communicate without being upset, angry, or misunderstood with each other. And I have friends from both sides of the aisle. But that being said, during the Civil War, it was another time where there was a big division in this country. And so that incarnation was very upset to me. And at the end of that regression, I told the hypnotherapist that my brother in that lifetime was the man that I was married to at that time in my lifetime. His name was Walter. So Walter and I were struggling, and he had some of his own karmic profile that he brought into our marriage without going into great detail. But when I went home to him and said to him, I want to see what you get when I hypnotize you about a Civil War incarnation that we've had together. So I hypnotized him. Now, he would have been the type of man that would have been saving me from the burning city of Atlanta because he was, into his machismo. But he went right into the same past life. He said, we're brothers. You're going with the Union. I'm going with the Confederacy. You're abandoning me. You always abandon me. Now, this is information that we both got under hypnosis that was in the Akashic records, that we could both tap into that specific connection and see who we were to each other by going into those Akashic records. And for those of you who have studied Edgar Cayce was known as the sleeping prophet in the 1930s, and he claimed to do readings by going into someone's subconscious mind and the Akashic records. So that was the first time Akashic records were really used as a tool of understanding in this century anyway. So the fact of the matter is that karma is repetitive patterns, and I abandoned that man again. So I abandoned him. In his mind's eye, in the Civil War, he died. In this incarnation, we divorced. So I hadn't spoken to him in maybe 17 years, and something hit me one day about him. And I thought perhaps one of his parents had passed away. I really cared about them. They were good to me. And I reached out to him in a private message on Facebook and asked him if something had happened with one of his parents, that I had felt something, and that while I had his attention, I wanted to apologize for my share of the demise of our marriage. He wrote back and said, no, his parents were fine, but he'd heard that my mother had died, and he was sorry also to hear that. And he, too, was sorry for whatever his part was in what happened between us. So it was kind of one of those things where we did a brief conversation in a private message and made some kind of an amends. Well, you know what happened? 6 months later, he had a heart attack and died. And so I was actually feeling his death, because that too would have been in the Akashic records between he and I, that we would have knowledge of each other somehow. When you're tuned in to the vibrational frequency of the other side of the veil, you can get information that way. You've all had deja vu, where you have felt you've known somebody before, that you have an instant connection or an instant kismet with them. That's part of you being in the Akashic records. Or just the opposite, that you've met somebody that you have an instant dislike for. That too can be in the Akashic records. So Walter had moved to the East Coast, and there was no reason for me to find out that he had passed away, actually, because we had no connection. But the truth was, I found out the day after. Again, serendipitousness in the universe, things that are put in the vibrational frequency, things where there is knowledge in those vibrational records, where I would get that information so that I was able to reach out to his family. And 2 days after he passed away, he was very vividly in my dream telling me that he truly had loved me when we were together, and that he was looking forward to seeing me again. Hi, Jane. I'm glad you're watching from the UK. It's nice for you to do that. So Akashic Records is really a vibrational frequency that holds information past, present, and future. You could say that Walter, that husband, was a soulmate of mine, because we've obviously been in other lifetimes together, and in this one we had a strong connection and much karma. So the Akashic Records are very important. If you would like to know more about the Akashic Records, just look it up. And then Edgar Cayce, of course, is a very interesting man to study and look at, because he was the one that talked a great deal about the city of Atlantis. So anyways, I hope you have a fabulous weekend. Again, I appreciate it when you share these and the comments. I love, love, love. Don't forget, a week from Sunday, I'm going to be live giving Facebook readings. Please mark your calendar for that. Some of you have asked me questions that I can't always get to, because I know that it's hard to understand that someone isn't, like turned on all the time, tuned up all the time, so that you can't just, at least I take it very seriously in a manner in which I wouldn't flippantly answer you. So sometimes I have to have your connection with me in order to answer that, or take some meditation time. So please make sure that you tune in for that, and you have a great, great weekend. Thank you for joining me this morning. Bye now.